All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation of Adaptations, Natural Selection. I'm Beverly Rayner. I'm the gallery director and curator at Cabrillo Gallery. And I'm here with my colleague, Victoria May, who is the art gallery coordinator. Every year we have a faculty exhibition at the gallery, a faculty and staff exhibition, sorry. Sometimes it's a sabbatical show. Sometimes it's a retired faculty show. And then sometimes, but most often it's a group show featuring current and emeritus faculty and staff from the art studio, art photography, and art history programs at Cabrillo. This year's faculty and staff exhibition is titled Adaptations, Art, Photography, and Art History Faculty and Staff Exhibition. Okay, let's start the slideshow, Vic. So there are over 30 artists in this exhibition who currently work as staff and faculty or are emeritus, as I said. And their work covers a really wide range of mediums and disciplines, just like our programming does. And the exhibition gives our hardworking educators and staff a chance to share their skills, their insights into their artistic practice. They can share these with the Cabrillo students that they teach and also our viewing audience, the community at large, by providing examples of creative adaptations to their ever-changing circumstances in life. And we're certainly all very aware right now of all of the adaptations we've all had to do. And our faculty and staff have had to first adapt during this pandemic to teaching online and providing services online. And now most of them are actually adapting back to trying to safely put their classes back in the classroom in person this semester. Next slide, Vic. If you would like to see the Adaptations exhibition, the exhibition is online only. Right now, the gallery is still closed to visitors, and we're just doing our programming online. Victoria has put up some links here, and she's also going to put them in the chat so that you can go to the chat and copy the links and go find the exhibition and our other programming at those links. I also want to let you know about what's coming up the gallery for the rest of this semester. Our next exhibition is Moving Images, Pause, Restart. It's a juried online exhibition of video shorts. And it's a juried call. So the jury selections will be made after Saturday when the call ends. So if you have something that you might want to enter for this exhibition, a video short on the theme of the exhibition, you still have until Saturday night to do so. And our final exhibition of the semester, as we always have, or as our last show of the calendar year, is the 12 by 12 by 12, which is a very, very popular exhibition. Last year we had it online. We're hoping to open up in the gallery this year with the 12 by 12, get back into space. We have our fingers crossed that forces beyond our control won't keep us out of there any longer, but we'll just have to wait and see. If you want to keep up with our programming as it progresses, you can sign up for our email list and subscribe. You can subscribe on our homepage on the gallery website. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I think I already said that, to keep up with the latest happenings, plus our highlights from each exhibition. Next slide, Vic. Today's talk is entitled Adaptations, Natural Selection. In this talk, we have 5 artists who will talk about their work in the exhibition that reflects an intense observation of and a deep reverence for nature. I'd like to introduce the artists participating in the talk tonight. And we're going to spotlight them as I introduce them. We're going to start with Sylvia Rios. Sylvia Rios is a ceramics instructor. She has an MFA from San Francisco State University, and she's been teaching at Cabrillo since 2004.
Hello.
Next up, is Dawn Nakanishi. Dawn has a Master of Fine Arts degree from San Jose State University and a Master of Arts degree in metalsmithing and jewelry from San Diego State University. She has been teaching at Cabrillo since 1997. Next up is Andree Lebourveau. She has an AA in art history from Cabrillo College and a BA in art history at UCSC. She is our visual resource curator for Cabrillo Art Studio Photography and Art History departments. She's a huge support to all of us. And she's also just a little tech wizard too. So she's been at Cabrillo since 1991, so even longer. Next up is Joe Cosentino. Joe started out at Cabrillo College, and then he received a BA in studio practice with an emphasis in spatial art at San Jose State University. Recently, Joe returned to Cabrillo, yay, to take the position of toolroom coordinator in January of this year. So he is one of our many alums who have made us very proud. Next up is Thiermann. Anne attended Mills College in Oakland and the Art Students League in New York City. She received a BA in art from the University of California, Santa Cruz, and an MFA from California State University in Long Beach. She has been with Cabrillo since 2012. So welcome to all of you. And now we're going to start our presentation, starting with Sylvia.
Take it away, Sylvia. You're muted, Sylvia. Sylvia, you're muted. Oh. Oh my God, Joe's right there.
Joe, my super duper guy. There's this really nice piece of canvas that was hanging over the unmute button. Now it's unmuted. Alrighty, so thank you for having me today. This is an honor to participate. And I guess I should talk about these three pieces. When I think about all the years I've been involved with clay, my roots are kind of in the late 60s, early 70s, you know, rebirth and regeneration of clay as a traditional, you know, Japanese material, and then as a funky sort of thing. And I've clung to clay as an art medium for all that it provides in terms of color and surface and history. I mean, it's been an art form that has defined cultures. So in these pieces, I took a very simple, mundane object, which is the bucket. And because I believe in clay, rather than make them a lot of mixed media, I threw the buckets on the wheel, made templates for the different parts. And they're all different, although they resemble each other. And then I used a variety of glazes that would bring out some quality that metal has to give the bucket a surface. And then instead of using a pedestal for, let's say, Buddha, I thought buckets are so mundane, I'm going to place Buddha in the bucket with some beautiful Carmel sand and a rock from Laramie, Wyoming. So to me, these carry more than a little symbolism. This is maybe a past that many people share of, you know, traditional Christmases and so forth. It's a slip cast piece with underglazes. The whale was slip cast and pit fired, and the Buddha was just slip cast with lots of raw edges and that sort of thing. So now I'm working on a mural here on campus, and what you see here on the left is a drawing of what the mural started out looking like. On the right, you see engineering students printing forms in the Fab Lab to make impressions in the clay. And those impressions became very technical looking. The leaves each have an area of science in them. Here's an example of how we organized it. You can see numbers for every single piece in the sky. There's letters in some of the leaves. And then as we made the pieces, we got more letters. The top part is an example of how the tiles are formed. So they're bas-relief. I don't know if I've ever seen anything other than a mosaic ceramic sculpture, but ours is a bas-relief. So there's lots and lots of three-dimensional detail on it. And these are some of the stamped images made by the engineering students. On the left, you see the finished forms with underglazes that are going to form a border at the base of the mural. And we have some real live engineering students who were involved in our ceramic process. So it was really great to have them come in, and probably a little vacation in terms of what they typically have to do. And we worked outside, we worked wherever, and this all happened in the fall of 19. So everything you see up to this point was fall of 19. What you see in the top right corner is an image of the Monterey Bay. And that was completed or made by Max Rain, who was the instructional assistant at the time, and two students, Denise and Carrie, working on it with him. And then below you see the leaves with some indentations, a lot of carving, modeling, very involved. Each student had a section, and within their section, they had a certain amount of license, but their section had to match perfectly with the neighboring section. And we did about 174 square feet of the mural in this manner. And then we have moved on to do things slightly differently. Top left, you see the Monterey Bay with glaze in it, and then the redwood forest below that, which is still to be glazed. You can see a leaf that says nano engineering by the ocean. And then this is an example of the leaves and branches, the gold colors, the golden rolling hills of California. And this particular section of leaves was done by a student who was enrolled in the class. And her name is Yumi, and she decided to editorially implant her little ladybug in there. So she took on a little artistic license, which was very welcome. This is a most recent, fully laid out section. You can see everything is really spread out. Carrie is there. She has a background as a librarian, so she's been instrumental in helping us keep this thing organized. And I call this the light at the end of the sky, because this is as close as we've gotten yet to having it finished. There's the blue of the sky, it fades to a lighter blue, and then there's the golden hills and the tree, and there's roots and a variety of other areas which are almost gone. So what you see here is no longer laid out on the floor, but has been moved to the engineering area, where it will be staged for installation by a tile guy, and we'll take it down in sections and he'll put it up in sections, and hopefully it'll be painless, but I think it's going to be a lot of work. And this is our original class in the fall of 19. And this great variety of students did the 170 something odd square feet of tile that was unglazed. And starting in April, we began to glaze it. So now we're pretty much done with that section and have completed other sections that were not made at that time. So you can see a nice variety of people giving a lot of themselves and their creative energies in putting this whole thing together.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. Next up, we have Dawn Nakanishi.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Well, some of my students know that at the tail end of last semester in the spring, I had to make a big adaptation. I fell and broke my ankle in like 4 places. And so that immediately put me in convalescent. I had 2 operations on my ankle in 1 week. And I had all these plans to be working in the studio, all these summer plans to do stuff and be active. And I spent 8 weeks in bed. And convalescing throughout the summer. So I really wanted to participate in the show and make some new work, but I knew I couldn't be working in my usual way of smithing or casting or doing things in my studio. So here I am. You can see that big boot on my leg, and I had to wear that for about 3 weeks and sleep in it. That's my doctor, Dr. Akira Yamamoto, who is an incredible engineer surgeon. This is where I walk my dogs when I do walk. I haven't been walking at all for the whole summer. And this is Rio Del Mar Beach. And for a lot of artists and people, we get our inspiration from walking on the beach. And I'm very grateful to be living on the coast. And this is my husband, Mike, and our 2 dogs, Simba and Tycho, rescue dogs, Poms. And it's just very rejuvenating and life affirming to be able to walk on the beach every day and observe nature close up. Next slide. So some of the wonders are the creatures, the crabs and the shell fish and all that wonderful Monterey Bay kelp that washes up. And then there's also a lot of flotsam and jetsam that comes from sea glass and ceramic shards, porcelain shards. And I have 2 friends that travel all over the world to collect sea glass and do sea glass jewelry, but they had bags of porcelain, and I was very captivated by these beautiful shards that have been rolled around in the waves for, you know, could be years, wearing off the ends and distressing the surfaces. And so I wanted to create some artwork using these. Next slide. Traditionally, many cultures in my travels have used the mosaic format to make pattern and beautiful hardscape walkways. This is from a garden at the Huntington Gardens in Pasadena. And this is in the Chinese gardens. And I just love the texture and the way that they use these natural stones for providing a collage or a pattern and texture in these pieces. Next slide. So I find these very inspiring. So it inspired me to create and sort some of the clay shards that have been rolled in the waves, and I love their tumbled shapes, and to make mosaics with these different shards that have been worn down. And there's a sense of time and subtlety of color in them. Next slide. And so these were some of the explorations that I did with these pieces. And I love the subtlety and the nuances of the colors and the textures. Next slide. So this is the one that's in the show. It's been set with resin and then mortared in with a grout, and utilizing some of the colors and the patterns. And for me, it was the adaptation that when I was studying art history about Claude Monet, that as he grew older and was not able to paint because of failing sight, that he just started doing collage with scissors and making beautiful artwork by cutting colors and pasting them and making compositions. And that was some of the strongest work that I'd seen. So I felt, well, you know, if I can't be working in the same way that I normally work, then let's try something different. And it was very satisfying to do something different and exploratory. So thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Don. That certainly is a great example of adaptation. Thank you for that. Next up is Andree Lebourveau.
Hi, thank you again for having me. So, working from home gave me the opportunity to hang out in my backyard, taking walks in the hills, open fields, and around the harbor. I observed the birds in nature, listened to their songs and calls. So this first slide is one of my walks from my house down to the Santa Cruz Harbor, right off of Castle Beach or Seabright Beach. And I was in awe of all these birds swooping and diving. And so I got in closer to check out what was going on. And there's what we call a bait ball. In this case, this was a school of fish that swam right close to the shore, which is kind of rare, but they were there. And all these birds, seagulls and pelicans, were taking the opportunity to get a nice lunch very easily. So that was really fun to watch, listen, and also to smell. You could really smell the oil of the fish from all of that digestion going on and that. So next slide. And this is also from one of my walks when I walked through the Arana Gulch. And you can see there's the cows, and it was green and verdant in the springtime before the drought. And there's a Western bluebird that's sitting on the fence. And this Western bluebird, or the Western bluebird, is making a new appearance in our area. And so for me, everyone talked about it, and it was such a joy to be able to see the bird. Of course, that's not the greatest photo, but with the camera, that's okay. It was perfect for me. And this allowed me to kind of see the bird up close and enjoy finally getting to see the sighting. Also in Arana Gulch, we've had some owls, a family of owls that were born there. So that was another fun sighting around. So I get a lot of my inspiration from nature, books, and sometimes calendars, other artists. And we'll go to the next slide. So my art form is printmaking, and I do screen printing, which I refer to it as a serigraph, because when I use the term screen printing, everyone goes, "Oh, you do t-shirts?" And you're like, "Oh, no, I work on paper," which is so much easier than fabric. So I silk screened this bird, the outline of the bird. So I do a lot of drawings from those sources that I'm inspired from, books and nature and photographs and so forth. And from that drawing, this one, since we were all talking about how we have to adapt during COVID, I was so tired of sitting in front of my computer, and it was great to get out walking in nature. And I didn't sketch because I was usually on a quick walk trying to get some good exercise, but I came home and I worked from photographs in the books, like I said, and sketched. And so I silk screened the bird. And then I did a drawing of the branch and this lovely octagon shape that was from a label stencil. And then I painted the bird, the branch, and the rest of it with watercolor. So combining what I have in my home studio just gave me a way of working in a smaller scale and just connected to nature. Next slide. So also another job I have here at Cabrillo is I work in the library, and I'm a cataloger. And so I cataloged this book that was called Hummingbirds by Ronald Ornstein. And this is a photograph of the booted racket-tail hummingbird. And so here again is an example of how I work. So I'll see these images, and then I will sketch and get ideas, color ideas, the palette and so forth, and shapes for my composition. So look at this background and just kind of keep that idea in mind. And now let's go to the next slide. So in screen printing, as some people might know, it's very flat, and you have to, you don't get as much modeling. You have to use a lot of color for modeling and shaping. And so this print, I decided, again, the same title as the image in the book, I decided to experiment in screen printing where I blocked off after I finished printing was sponge the background. So that was kind of a neat little revelation for me to kind of not have to plan the entire print through with the background. I can have this freedom, which was really neat. So my style here, again, linear a little bit, and then I do a reductive style of screen printing. So I draw my stencils, keep them open, and then I reduce them, much like wood carving and so forth. So I started with the pink, and then I'll leave that and block that off, and that shows, and then I print the next color of the magenta, leave that, and then I move on to another stencil of the linear line and did the bird as well, which the bird has pink and green and the purple on that. So those are the stages I work in my printmaking. So lastly, I just wanted to say that I am a member of the Printmakers at the Tannery. We've been together 11 years. It was founded with myself and Jane Gregorius, who is a emeritus faculty, printmaking art studio faculty, and all of her studio art students that we were always hanging out, tried to take classes. So we formed a collective. And again, we've been together 11 years, and I just want to encourage everyone that we are now open again for First Fridays, and we do demonstrations and so forth in our art studio. So thank you very much.
And Jane will actually be in the next talk.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Andree.
Thank you, Andree. And yes, that printmaking collective at the Tannery is a great resource. There's a lot of variety of artwork to see there. So thank you for that, Andree. Next up is Joe Cosentino.
All right. Thank you for having me here too. This is awesome to be doing this with you guys. So my work focuses on the relationship between our natural resources and the tools that we use to harvest natural resources. That can be some in fisheries. A lot of it has been in forestry. I have kind of a split career working in the woods and working as an artist. And a lot of my work has been really, really simple in patterns. Just focusing on the pattern of saw blades and the patterns of trees and just finding where they line up, finding something out of a very back and forth relationship, sometimes destructive, finding a harmonious point. And I started really wanting to get into why I want to share this so much. Why is this my thing? And what is the impact? Why growing up in the forest was this my inspiration? And so the work that I'm going to share with you tonight is it's focused around redwood needles and mostly the shadows they create. And I thought a whole bunch about it while I was doing my work, and I was working out in the snow and really trying to figure out what is it about this moody atmosphere that is what I want to say, what I want to share. And I decided that it was specifically the way that light comes through redwood needles and creates environments. And that was the thing that I really wanted to share. And so that's kind of what this series is. And so this is kind of like a midpoint here, the funnest part of the project I wanted to share. This is the whack-a-mole with these redwood needles. And whack-a-mole for artists is just whack-a-mole with like an overbearing sense of self-importance. This is a really, really fun project. So in doing this, I was really surprised. I thought, it'll be easy to make these things. I tried so hard. So here's sort of our progress, trying to figure out how to make redwood needles and just taking them and studying and working with them. I tried fold forming, which when I was a student here at Cabrillo, I got to learn being on the sidelines of Don's jewelry classes. And they each had their own character. They started kind of looking like feathers for a while. And then I just kept on working, and I finally stumbled on, after a whole bunch of tries, okay, we have a redwood needle. And I wanted to make a whole tree. I mean, I want to make huge environmental pieces, full-size trees and stuff. So it's like, okay, we have one needle. Let's make 1,000. And so I just got started trying to transfer and figure out, the scale and this whole kind of thing. And so if we go to the next slide, I think I have a image of just trying to actually take the artifacts and laying them out on sheets of steel, transform out and getting in there. This is all plasma cut work by hand. And it was a long process. It was a lot of hours. It was really neat to get into the shape and really kind of get connected with where the light was coming through, what it was. I'd never really looked quite so deeply at how the redwood needles grow and that kind of thing. And once it was put together, I was really, really happy with the result. Here is sort of this piece. It features the relationship between the tool. This is an old lever from a Big Creek sawmill with the redwood needles. Some of them are the real ones, and the ones I'm making growing out of them. And in our next slide, I'll show you the sort of the finished project there. And so on the right-hand slide, this is the shadows. This was the whole thing that I was after here. Just trying to, I had a show lined up at a gallery with fantastic lights, and I thought, what are we going to do? And I thought, it's just, okay, we're really going to try for this. And this is kind of, my work is not very conceptual for the most part. And I'm thrilled in that place. Simple patterns, really simple starts, but this is kind of the behind the scenes. This is where, trying to figure out what the work's about. It's really just these little environments. The other piece that's featured here, this was an axe that was up in Humboldt County. It was somebody gave it to me as a gift. It had washed out of the Mad River allegedly from an old logging camp. And so I just wanted to make something with sort of a regenerative or regrowth theme, with the little sprig growing out of it. The metal that the sprig's made out of is from an old redwood historic water barrel tank too. So they're all these old artifacts, and it's really kind of awesome getting to work with stuff that old. A lot of the material I'm working with is from the 1880s, and it's a little intimidating, but it's really neat to have a chance to work with it and hopefully, kind of like the forest regenerating, just give it a new life. So this is a little bit of similar work and what I'm working on right now. I just started this series during, the time where COVID and all of this. I was doing a lot of work up in the fire zones, and it was really wild. About halfway through that whole chapter, I remember thinking, wow, I'm geared up to make art. This is really exciting. And then I did so much that it was like a whole ball of stress. And so this bulldozer that I was using, I wanted to make something that, basically took there was a whole ball of stress, and I wanted to make something regenerative and new out of it. So in that theme, I'm taking these old tracks, and these are the shoes on the machine. I'm making these delicate fern shapes, and I'm just got it started with that. So I'll be thrilled to get to share with some of you as that progresses. And this is just an example of some more of the kind of my work in general here. The lower image with the saw blades is sort of just like trying to find those patterns, and there's something in the simplicity of just patterns and shapes and landscapes that I really, really enjoy making and sharing.
Thank you, Joe. All right.
Thank you, Joe. I'm trying to shut my alarm off. Thank you. Stop it. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, great to see you using the tools and transforming them into the natural forms. It's an interesting cycle. All right.
Thanks.
Next up is Ann Thiermann.
Hi, folks. I'm glad to be a part of this series. And I feel so connected to many of the things that my other 4 colleagues have talked about. I too feel the peace of nature when I'm out painting plein air. And I've been pursuing this series of rock, water, tree, and light because partly because it just is what feels natural to me. I grew up in the Santa Monica Mountains, and as a teenager, what I had for friends was really a large running stream flowing through strewn boulders and banks filled with large oaks and sycamores. And I think it's critical today that these elements are supported and nourished, because it's what nourishes our earth with the climate change. One of the places that is a perfect place to explore rock and water is Point Lobos. And I brought my easel out to both Bird Island, which is just beyond China Cove. And I love the fact that, you know, even in China Cove, we can see different colors of water. Sometimes the vertical format for landscape is ascendant, and it has this uplifting feeling. The one on the left is also Point Lobos, crashing waves, and the one on the right is a 17-mile drive. And what I'm trying in most of these is to get the energy like a visual flow I see akin to music. I've always worked as a pianist organist, and so I'm hearing music in my head while I'm painting. Next. One of the neat state parks that we have is Natural Bridges State Beach Park. And as an undergraduate at UCSC, I walked the missing arch from the landmass to the center arch, and it fell in 1980. And if you look closely out into the water, there's a rim of rock, and that was the first arch. This was at really 3 arches, and that went down in 1910. But it's great to be out along the cliff's edge and see what water does. Here's West Cliff that has the light flooding in from the moon at night. I have my little miner's light on out there trying to capture the spirit of that. Next. 2 of my favorite parks, Big Basin, Redwood State Park, Berry Creek Falls on the left. I hiked out the 11 miles to see it. And these are fairly bigger paintings, so I did studies. Today it's charred all around it. The trees are all burnt, but the falls are still falling. Fortunately, on the right, the San Lorenzo Giant is in the middle of Henry Cowell Redwood State Park. And in 1910, Teddy Roosevelt stood in front of it. And in that photo, you don't see the green new growth that's coming out of the redwood burl. It was just the burl. So these trees are slow to grow, they're old, and they're wonderful when you see the original growth trees, old growth trees. Fall Creek is also part of Henry Cowell, and I was delighted to see the flooding of the light coming across the hill. And I sat there working on this, and I thought, you know, 100 years ago, this would have been noisy. The red trees would have been torn down because this was a lime kiln canyon, and oxen were carrying chunks of limestone down this field. Several of my pastels are their field notes for larger murals. So this is the first of 5 murals I've completed recently for the Pfeiffer Big Sur Ewolton Nature Center. It's 8 by 15 feet. And what's fun was to study the kinds of rocks, and particularly how do roots grow. So alder roots, redwood roots, and then get the narrative content of what kind of animals, birds, and there's a deer in there. And this is the second mural, it's 8 by 8 feet. And as the river advances up to the Big Sur Gorge, the rocks change, they become more colorful, they become the nice rock. And it was great to find this tree that actually had the roots wrapped around the rock. So I had a model for this particular painting. You can find all sorts of critters. Andree walked out to Arana Gulch in 2005. I was drawing these oak trees. Today, they're no longer there. Then it was called the jungle by the local kids. And then I found this wonderful spot off the marsh trail of the tidal creek that's flowing out to the harbor. And I just walked there a couple of days ago. The water was up to the top and the field was filled with roses. So, anyway, this particular one is from the Neary Lagoon. And I was thinking about Impressionist strokes, but what really happened was I'm standing with my easel on this moving boardwalk and cyclists are biking behind me. And every time, you know, my easel would jump up and down. And I say, it's really hard to control my strokes. So I just let it go and turned impressionistic on it. So these are both from the Aptos Creek near where I live. The left one in Nicean Marks. I went there many times until the tree fell and it's no longer available. And the one on the right is two old snags in the creek near the Aptos Community Park. Both of them talk about the interaction of water and rock and tree. In Henry Cow in the fall, you can see luminescent maple trees along the river. And I was struck by the yellow of this tree against the bluish cast of the redwoods and the pines on the other side. And I shifted my medium to a much softer surface. So the strokes are not as clear. They're blended in together. And I enjoy the flow of the light coming down across the river and then up through the tree. The last of my images is from a very common scene, that a pathway that goes from 31st Street to Moran Pond, Moran Lake. Is one time I was walking it and the light through the eucalyptus was warm and it cast these beautiful cast shadows into the water. So I did studies there. And because the light was changing, I did have to do a lot of it in my studio from photographs. But throughout all of these, I'm thinking about those different elements. Hopefully some of you will come to visit me during Open Studios the first week in October, October 2nd and 3rd, and 16th and 17th. I have several areas that I'm showing my work, both inside and outside, and would love to show you more of the series.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne. Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Nice little escape into nature there.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you want to see the whole exhibition, there are many more artists in the exhibition. Oops. So
Sorry.
there are the links right there, and they are also in the chat at the top of the chat. So you can follow us again on Facebook and Instagram and check out our email list to sign up on the homepage if you want to keep abreast of what we're up to. We're also going to have 2 more artist talks for this exhibition. The information is there. The next one is going to be next Wednesday. And its theme is evolving in a changing world, and it has a lot to do with what many of us have been trying to do to cope with the pandemic situation. And then the one on September 22nd is called Shifting States of Being, and it is about portraiture and representation. So again, thank you for that. And then let's see. Okay, now it's time for Q&A. So you can put, if you don't want to talk out loud, you can put your questions in the chat. And then if you do want to actually speak your question, then you can raise your hand either electronically in Zoom, or raise your hand physically, and we'll look for you in the grid of participants, and then unmute yourself to be able to talk. All right, so let's leave the slideshow now, and I'll join each other on the screen. If you want to see everybody at once, go to the view grid up at the top, and you can click on gallery view or to see everybody all at once. Speaker view will just show the person who's talking. Hi, everybody. So does anybody have any questions? Leslie, you're just saying hi. You don't have a question?
Oh, I have a couple of questions. I'll start
Okay,
unless
great.
someone else does. Let's see. With Joe, I was wondering. I mean, that last piece, the one that I think it's called Felton with the landscape and then the tree. And you said there were saw blades in there.
Yeah.
Is that what the edge is? And
Yeah.
I'm curious how that got. You absolutely transformed them. So I guess I want some insight on how they are in there.
Thanks. Yeah, that was actually a really special one. I'd been wanting to take saw blades and try to make it look like it's all out of one piece of metal with the and move the blades, you know, into a hillside for quite a while. And a friend of mine had passed, and his family they gave me sort of like the heirloom saws, and so I was like, okay, we got to get it right. And so for that, it's layers of saw blades and brass in between for like the fog and the clouds. But what I did is I took the saw blades and I just cut a really thin strip right below the teeth, and then I cut the contour of the hills out, and I heated and I formed those down and welded them, and then I took the whole saw blade and I put it in a forge, and then I distressed it. It's so that it was all just all went back to looking like an old saw blade, but with, of course, the contour.
Wow.
And it was the same thing with the brass. I went and distressed the brass and went through piles of patinas, and it was actually kind of a breakthrough piece for me. A lot of my work in steel at that point, I'd been doing these layered landscapes, and it was all about control, trying to keep things from warping, keeping them flat. And this is the first piece where I started to move a little bit more, and the layers got to have waves. One of the reasons I shared that piece is it's a direction that I'm excited to do more of. I shared the dozer track series that I'm started on here, and that'll be a little bit more spatial. But just having these waved distressed layers in landscapes, and with the saw blades a little bit more disguised. It's something that I'll be doing more of for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there other questions? Because I have another question.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask on Andree, was the choice of the octagon, like, was that kind of what you had around, or was there a thought about that, like in terms of, the shape?
So that was like a sticker label. And so I used all of the labels up on my cards I send out. And so I had this beautiful kind of metallic leftover. And I'm like, that's so pretty. I'm going to make it into a card. And I stuck it onto this card and so forth. And then it popped off the next day. And I went, oh, a stencil. This is something I can use. So it was kind of cool. So I just started drawing them. And of course, it totally reminded me of bees and honeycomb. And so that's why I picked that palette of the, honeys, So that was kind of a random thing that happened at that time. So thank you.
Let's see. And it looks like
Andree, while you're here, there's a question in the chat. I wanted to ask Andree about her saturated, glorious color palette. What inspires you in terms of the color?
That's a really good question. I love color. So sometimes I see colors, like I like to collect colored glass, and when the sunlight hits in it, it makes this amazing color. So times I will picture color in nature and see things and remember that. And other times there'll be images of birds and stuff that maybe are butterflies or something, but I want way more vivid color to it. So I create that from my own imagination or colors that I like. So I'm mixing and matching. I've actually redone prints because the color wasn't right and the colors don't react well together if they're being layered. So I'll play with layering colors. So sometimes I just always want things to pop differently. So that's why I'm not a realist. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Joe. So at the bottom of that axe, there were some roots. And I was wondering if that was like a cast piece, or was it hand formed, or what was made? How was that made?
Yeah, that's just little bits of some more of that barrel strapping that was the historical barrel strapping. The stuff's like wrought iron qualities, really nice stuff, and then just some round steel stock that I just did reductions forging.
Mhm. Okay.
I had a simple little setup out in the mud. I got an old anvil, and then they were blended in a little bit, with some gas welding, trying to get them to kind of look nice. But yeah, it's just forged and weld.
Okay. And then I know how much you love trees and how much you love redwoods and just the beauty and the glory and everything about them. Now, it must have been awfully difficult to be up there in the burn scarred areas and to see all of that damage. So I know I have a grandson who's a firefighter, and he talks about the amazing structures of those trees and the underground root systems and all of that, and just how they're the amazing giant organisms. So could you talk a little bit about, I mean, are you seeing the signs of life coming back and how that feels?
It's a really incredible thing, especially to go through something that huge and that dramatic, and to be hanging out with these creatures that have been around for 500, 1,000 years. It's definitely working around trees that were at least 500 years. And the fire, you can see where it had gone through historically and where it's back again. And that was it was incredible, because at first it was daunting. In the first days, we're out on cliff sides and stuff. The ground's a couple 100 degrees, and there's no animals, and the trees were they looked so burnt. Specifically the redwood trees, they didn't even look like they could come back. And then just trying to remember, hey, this has happened before. And in a small scale, like one step at a time. I remember the day that the butterflies came out. And that was the only animal around, was butterflies, and they were looking for water. And then after about a week, we had the birds were fighting for territory, and then we even had deer. I had this hazard job on a cliffside where I was dropping huge trees cliffside, and a deer came out and walked out on them with like strange behavior, but okay, cool, the deer are back. But or on like a just pacing it out. It felt like minute after a minute of just emergencies, and everybody in the world wanted to cut all their trees down. And so one of the things we did is we're doing all these CAL FIRE red tags, and it's like, when they red tag your structure, it's condemned basically for Reno to live in it, right? So we got all the hazard stuff down, and everybody wanted to take all these trees, everything down, and just pacing it out, asking folks, just wait a month. We'll get to all this stuff and just see what happens. And sure enough, little just green sprigs coming out, and there's certain areas where, certain types of trees and certain situations where they had to go, but it was amazing to see just the resiliency. In like 3 weeks, a month, all of a sudden you've got new growth, and just trying to remember, like, hey, Mother Nature's been through this before. So that part's inspiring. It's really sad, but a lot of adventure and a lot of incredible experiences, scary experiences, but incredible experiences that to pull inspiration for artwork from, and the resiliency in people. And in the trees and in nature, not just the trees, but people, watching folks get out there. One of our faculty members, Sam Carlson, I went to his property, and they had started to make a split rail fence from the burnt trees and planted daffodils along the highway. It's just so incredible just to see the resiliency in people. That's the awesome part, from being out there choking in all the ash and stuff. It was really great to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely adapting to the new circumstances in very dramatic ways. But thank you for that insight. It's really nice to hear it from someone who's been in the thick of it, to see that there is hope after all of this.
Many of the redwood trees get charred on the outside, and they regrow from the inside. And there's often holes in the middle of trees because they've been burnt. And some of like the coulter pine, the seeds won't grow again unless it has gone through fire. So there are certain trees and plants that literally won't start again, and they will be started now because of fire. So we can look to the Native Americans' traditions of having more regular fires to clean out underbrush and meadows too. We have a lot to learn in terms of fire.
Don't we? Does anybody else have a question?
Oh, Russ.
This discussion has kind of led to what I was thinking about was Anne's beautiful pictures of Big Basin as it was. And one of the things, the forest often plays tricks on you. The light is so hard to capture. You try to get it on your camera, and it doesn't always work out the way you're planning it, or you saw it, or it changes so fast that it's not there by the time you get the camera up. So I was really appreciative of how Anne was dealt with the light in many of her murals. They just, they bring back impressions that I've had of the forest that I don't often see. And before I turn it over to her, I also wanted to say that the Sierras mean the Sawtooth Mountains. So I think Joe was kind of literally embodying what the Sierras are. So those are my comments, and I appreciate all the people in this show. It's been a very interesting story of how you get your inspirations.
Well, thank you for that, Ross. Do you want to respond at all, Anne?
Going out and painting on locations, the light does change. And so frequently, if I do it completely in plein air, I come back like Monet did. I mean, I don't do the whole thing once. Maybe I'm back 3 times. For the big San Lorenzo giant painting, I did a small pastel on location. It was just about 12 inches tall, and then worked on the bigger painting, and then came back several times to learn more about that particular tree. So light does change, and sometimes you have to establish the shadows in a picture first. So if you found the light effect that you're really looking for, then you establish that effect. And when I was studying at the Art Students League, the light effect was really a major focus for a couple of the years that I was studying on either the figure or on nature.
Thank you for that. Dawn, I have a question for you. So you had to work in an entirely different way.
Yes.
Did it feel playful at a certain point? Like, did it feel like freeing or bring you back to your roots somehow, or feel
Extremely playful.
good?
I always lecture to my students in jewelry, glue is a 4-letter word. And so I really had to eat my words and think in terms of resin as, another art material. And of course, people like Robert Rauschenberg and many other artists have used resin heavily in their work. But it is kind of like a glue. And most of the things that I do as a jeweler is set things mechanically and traditionally, and many of my colleagues would frown on using glue. So it was a big, how should I say, adjustment for me to look at resin as another art form. And I did teach a color on metal course in the spring, where we were doing a lot of experimentation in the class with my students with resin and color and upcycling things like aluminum, colorful aluminum cans and things like that. So there was a little bit of freeing up for me for that. And so I was trying to stay playful and just think differently than I normally do. So it was very, very liberating, because I will continue to work this way. And I totally think it's a viable way to make art, obviously. So that it was a change for me. Thank you for asking me that.
Sure, sure. And I know that a lot of instructors had to find ways around what they would normally teach for project wise or materials wise because of not being able to teach in person. So there was a lot of breaking out in really inventive ways that it was nice to see in the student show last year. So I think that can also help an artist think differently about what they do normally as well.
Absolutely.
And then Sylvia, I don't see a sense of scale there in your work, in your piece in the show. How tall are those? I think those buckets kind of life size or?
They're bucket-sized buckets, yes.
Okay.
And I guess what I did is I miniaturized the whale.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So that's not so big. And then the other figures, you know, one is an Eastern religious figure that's grown in popularity by leaps and bounds among me and my friends. My granddaughter, who's going to be 2, knows Buddha really well. She has a Buddha bunny and she rubs the belly of any Buddha that she finds and smiles. And the little, you know, it always makes me laugh because I've always, as a person of color myself, I always thought it rather strange that Jesus Christ was blonde, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, and that he was in the Middle East. And I'm going, this doesn't make sense to me. As a little kid, it was like, why are they doing that? And so in a way, I felt like I was taking icons. Yeah, the scale is not exactly intact, but it kind of makes it all bucket sized. And I guess that's what I wanted, something relatively small to put things in proportion.
But you didn't really talk about the icons that much earlier. Can you, I mean, I guess to a certain degree it's evident, but I mean, I would just like to hear your voice, your thoughts on that.
Well, when I put them together in that way, you know, the Buddha was made from a commercially produced mold that was found, and it wasn't in very good shape. And so when I closed it and made a nice slip, and I poured the slip into the Buddha mold and I took it apart, it had all these, you know, what do they call it? Bronze arts. What's the name for it? Flashing. Yes, they had it all out there, and it just seemed perfect. You know, it's like a mistake. It's a problem. It's an issue. But for some reason, it seemed better that way. And then the whale was also a mold made object, but I do a pit firing every year at my house, although I haven't in the last couple of years due to COVID, where we dig a trench that's 4 feet by deep by 6 feet wide and about 16 to 20 feet long. And we'll load up, I'll invite all my college students from 3 different colleges. We'll all make work and just heap it in there, and it's giant, and we'll layer all these things. So it's kind of like a Native American, you know, earthly icon to me. A whale is symbolic of so much, like the ocean and all that. So even though I'm not a whale worshiper, nor a Buddha worshiper, or a blonde, blue-eyed Jesus Christ worshiper, it just seems like they all refer to some component of deep spiritual thought that I can identify with. You know, and so that's how I ended up with them. And it was all very playful, but then I think spirituality should be somewhat playful. So
That's great. Thank you.
And then Deborah was wondering, where is the mural going to be placed on campus?
If you go on the entry to the college that goes uphill, the driveway, there is a parking structure, maybe 100 feet up that driveway. If you drive through that parking structure and park your car near the buildings, there's a large HVAC cinder block housing just downhill from that parking lot, and it faces the engineering department. And so that's where it will be. It's a large patio. It faces a large studio space that they have. And it's not really facing a large area of campus like a student center or anything, but it's going to kind of fill that space up pretty well and cover up all those cinder blocks. So it'll be available all night and day. Who knows? Maybe they'll put light on it.
Sylvia, I wanted to say, having worked on big community murals, I know what the amount of work it is, and to get people inspired to continue to work on it when they weren't part of the original designing is also something you have to like. Not all people want to work on something that they didn't help design. So you obviously are quite a shaker and a mover to keep this project going now. It's been 2 years that you've been working on it.
We started talking about it 7 years ago. We started making it in the fall of 19 with our interruption for shutdown. And some of the people who are still working on it are actually some of the original students.
Wow,
That
that's
moved on, and it's kind of, we have snacks. We have lots of snacks. That's always the key to someone's, open heart. And
yeah, lots of what?
they're really people of principle. To continue working on this, at this point, I'm not getting paid. The pay that I had for the class and such, it's all kind of, but it's kind of like if I drop the ball, think of all the hours and hours of energy that have gone into this mural that would just die. And I think people feel the same way. Carrie, who's one of the young women that was pictured, her mother's used to be a librarian here at Cabrillo College. Her dad was an instructor. She and Andree have a lot in common. She adores art history. And I can see her, finding her way to some kind of position like that. She's still taking art history classes, but she's an organizer. And she said, "You can't stop doing this, Sylvia." It's kind of, she won't let me. Not that I would, but it's that kind of thinking. It's kind of idealistic and impractical, but we're all doing it. People need something to get away from. I think James is one of the fellows also pictured. He's retired. His mother-in-law is not doing well. His wife has some issues. He's older, and it's like, I can get out and I can go do something productive. So he will just work his tail off 2 days a week, and it's purpose, and it's something larger than any of us. And I guess I don't have to sell it. It kind of sells itself, and yet I provide snacks. It does help.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. So I think it's about time to call it quits for today. And thank you all so much for presenting. And thank you so much for coming, all of you who came tonight. And we hope to see you at our next talk next Wednesday at 6 o'clock.